reason that I'm here is because the club is seeking change.
He said, well, whether you come or not, you're going to see a completely different Spurs team under him.
My hope and my desire and what I'm going to try and do is give our supporters hope and belief that we're going to embark on something special.
Welcome into the Tottenham Depot. I am your host, Andrew. You can follow me at A Stetka. You can follow us at Tottenham Depot. This is episode 219, and we have got a packed show for you today, talking about a second consecutive Premier League victory for Tottenham Hotspur. I will be damned. What a miracle it has happened. We've got the Todd Father alongside. He is at TC_Kasho on X and at the Todd Father on Blue Sky. Todd, what's up, my man?
Any day, brother. Any day you can have a conversation about beating Manchester United 3 times in one season is a good fucking day. The first time we've got a league double against those asshats since 89-90 season or something along those lines. Man, I am juiced up to talk about how fucking terrible they are.
That is all we're going to discuss. The whole podcast. That's all I want to discuss. Yes, that is indeed. Hold on. Let me check off that note. You already fired it off for me. I love that. We're accomplishing things right off the bat. Caroline is also here. She's at CG Steph Go. Caroline, how's your Sunday?
Better after the men's game. It did not start off real great. I will be honest.
It sure didn't.
But yeah, I feel like the men's team really needed that game and just the boost of having so many players back in the match day squad. So yeah, good things.
Yeah, we're certainly going to talk about a North London derby that did not go the way of Tottenham on the women's side of things. A heavy 5-0 defeat, which we will come on to as well. Going to get into all of that after we tell you about Digital Spurs. If you don't know by now, and if you've been listening to this podcast, you must not be listening very carefully, because we have been telling you all season to head on over to digitalspurs.com for your favorite types of apparel that has some artwork on it designed by our guy, Danny Garrison. We love digitalspurs.com. Go there for all of your Tottenham merch. We're talking hats, crew necks, hoodies. You can get mugs, all that kind of stuff, TC. It's the best. You're rocking a Digital Spurs cap right now and hoodie.
And a sweatshirt, in case you need to know. But, I had the good opportunity to take the kids down to San Diego Spurs today and get to celebrate that victory with the folks down there at Fair Play. It was a good time. And I cruised in, rocking my Digital Spurs merch, had the hat on, had the sweatshirt on, as you can see here. And I got stopped no less than 10 times with people telling me how awesome my merch was. I had a guy come up to me, and I told him, anybody who comments, I let him know to go see Danny at Digital Spurs and let him know where they can find him. And I had a guy come up to me before the end of the match, was like, hey, I just bought that hat. So shout out to Danny. Shout out to San Diego Spurs. We're always happy to pump up the lads. So
I love all of that. Digitalspurs.com. Go there, buy merch, enjoy. Enjoy I did this morning when Tottenham Hotspur picked up a 1-0 victory over Manchester United. When's the last? I didn't look at this before, and I'm about to say something. When's the last time Spurs won a 1-0 match? Because that ain't something they do very often. But this was a really, really interesting one, and I'm interested to dive in and see what you guys thought about this one, because there was a lot of reaction that this was just kind of a slog and not a very aesthetically pleasing match, but I enjoyed it, and it kind of went the way I thought it would. We knew Spurs were going to be getting some players back from injury in this one, and that they did, including the goalkeeper, who I thought made a really, really big difference, Todd. But let's just start with grand takeaways from this 1-0 victory. What were yours?
Sure. So a few different things. First and foremost, last time we had a 1-0 victory was October 24th against AZ Alkmaar in the Europa League. So there you go. And I think if you remember correctly, that was a Richarlison penalty to get that one over the line in the 53rd minute. So there you go there. In terms of takeaways from this game, first and foremost, Vicario is the starting Premier League goalkeeper. Antonin Kinski has the ability to be a starting Premier League goalkeeper one day. That day is not today. And I was so thankful to have Vicario back in between the sticks, especially within that first 20 minutes. He faced some real nasty business and did a great job of keeping us in the match. And then to secure the win, he had 3 different saves between like the 65th and the 80th minute that were like down to his right and got silly with it. It was fantastic. So that was great to see. Next thing that was great to see, we actually had a bench with senior players on it today, which was incredible news. And so when you look over and nobody has to worry about, whether or not they did their maths homework last night and they're going to play against Man United today, like, that's a good news. That's really good news. So I was excited that we got to see a full bench again. I was excited that Madison, not just for the goal, but for the effort that he put back in. Someone may want to come onto that a little bit more as they may need to beat their chest just a touch there. But I thought the biggest takeaway for me of this entire match is three things. First and foremost, as I mentioned, and I have no problem, patting myself on the back here. As I mentioned, once we started getting healthy this season, this team was going to look entirely different because we have quality players who play in a quality system for a quality manager. And when we're healthy, we do good things. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I want to say is we're still not even close to being as good as we can be. We don't have our number one center back pairing. Neither one of those motherfuckers are on the pitch. We don't have our number one or our number two striker, which is a massive difference. And you're seeing Matthias Tell learn that playing center back in the Premier, or playing a center forward in the Premier League, is entirely different than doing it in Germany. Respect. The last thing that I want to say is fuck Ruben Almiron is where I wanted to go with that one. That was the one I wanted to make sure that we got out there. That guy had some quotes in midweek that was basically like, yeah, that's all good. Spurs is tough and whatnot. But listen, you got to understand, I got a lot of pressure going on. I'm in fucking Manchester United over here. And we let him know this week that, United gets battered everywhere they go. So that's fine. And I wanted to make sure that he got that firsthand. So it wasn't just the other guy that we beat this year. We spanked that guy too. So all of those things aside, I think there's a lot of quality takeaways from this match that is going to propel us to that 10th place spot, maybe 9th place spot, just out of Europe. It was out of the Europa Conference League, right, is what I'm looking for, right? And allows us to focus on a quality Europa League finish going down the stretch.
Caroline, are you going to just say it's United, lads, or were you impressed by this one? Because I kind of was, and I want to hold this one up and say, hey, they got this one done. But let's go to you and get your thoughts on this one.
I mean, I think it is important to point out that this was not peak United by any means. And, I agree with you, Todd. I think that their manager has really kind of abdicated some responsibility. I know even United fans are getting frustrated because I had a friend of mine saying, he respects Ange for never throwing the players under the bus during our injury crisis, Timo aside, maybe. But yeah, I think it is a big difference in vibes between the two clubs, even though we're in pretty similar, table positions, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you, Andrew. I don't think this was as dire as some of our fan base kind of painted it to be. I enjoyed watching the game, which has not always been the case this season. And I really just think having so many of the players back from injury was huge. And some of them were a surprise because I think Ange had kind of been coy about, Johnson and Odegaard when they were going to be back, and to see them on the bench and then to actually get game time and, I think make a decent impact in the game was nice to see. And also Vicario, I also have to, commend him for his performance. And Ange talked about this in his press conference before the game, like how huge it was going to be to have him back, not just, his performances, but like his leadership. And, we saw that with him literally taking captain's armband from Son later in the game, but also just how vocal he was throughout the match. I feel like that had kind of been missing from the defense. So I was just so happy to see him back and his old self.
Yeah, Ange in the pre-match press conference actually kind of scoffed at the idea that Vicario, that there would even be a question that he was going to step right back in between the sticks. He is the number one guy, and I think we've all been aware of that. But now that he is fully back, it really was a big boost to the entire club. TC, you mentioned it. The other man that returned directly into the starting lineup was James Maddison. He gets the winner in this one. And look, it was a putback, if you will, a rebound and a goal. Nothing glorious, but had to be there at the right time and anticipated the deflection that was going to take, and a well taken goal as well. It's not just the goal though for me with Madison. And yes, I'm the one that's going to pat my back now, my own back, because I said weeks ago, I really think that James Madison missing from this midfield makes a massive difference. And him coming back showed that. I mean, he was running shit for the 60 plus minutes that he was on the pitch. And I thought that the midfield balance was there. This Spurs dominated the midfield in this game. I mean, they really, really dominated that part of the pitch entirely and were on top of United constantly. And look, United had its spells of play as well. The thing that I think surprised me about the reaction to watching this game for a lot of people was I thought this would have been a good game for the neutral because it was up and down the pitch. It was back and forth. There were challenges. It was physical. There were a lot of challenges being thrown in. I actually thought that this game was Todd, I don't want you to jump down my throat here. I thought this game was officiated in a pretty even keeled and smart way.
Yeah, it was.
It was allowed to get physical, but also then there was a line, and it was a pretty even line for both teams. It was like, okay, we see where that line is, and the cards started coming out eventually. And I just thought that it was two teams that know they're up against a wall and know that they needed something, and they were both bucking their head at one another. And Spurs got the better of United because they're a better team and they're getting healthier. And I was super impressed by the effort by all of the players that were on the pitch. I was also impressed by, Caroline, you alluded to it, and both of you did, the fact that they were able to bring on 5 subs and really change the game with senior players. I mean, Popsar, Brennan Johnson, Archie Gray, Yves Bissouma, and Wilson Odebear.
When you mean we have depth?
When you can bring those players off the bench, you can really make a difference in a game.
Oh, you mean the guys that have had to start for us for the last week, so they're all sharp? Or for the last month, 2 months, so they're all sharp? Yeah, dude. Like, the one player that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet is Jed Spence. Jed Spence played out of his fucking mind the entire game. He had 3 different blocks on defense. He skinned 3 different Man United players up one side and down the other on that touchline. It was one of the best fullback performances we've seen from an Ange fullback this season, for sure, if not ever, since he's been at Tottenham. I think that Jed Spence is legitimately undroppable at this point in time. And I think when Udogie is back full fitness, I hope that Jed Spence has the ability to give Pedro a rest on that right-hand side. The other thing that I wanted to point out here, Decky is gassed. Get my man some rest. He played very, very well today, but he's tired. And you can tell that he's tired because he doesn't have that drop of a shoulder and go. He's holding a lot of stuff up. And so, he's getting people with little tricks, being Decky, because Decky's got all the tricks. But we're not nearly – he's – this, no pun intended, he's being a little ginger with his play right now.
He looks a little bit like Sonny on the other side.
I was going to say.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and that is going to become something, especially with the likes of Johnson and Odebear coming back, where both those guys on the wings are going to need to rotate. Now, TC, you brought up Matistel a moment ago. I don't want to see him move from the center forward spot. Like, I don't need to see him go out to the wing. I think he's
not until Solanke's ready.
Yeah, I don't think he will for a while.
I think when Solanke's back, I think moving him to the left wing is fine.
Even then, I would like to see him be playing because I think he's looked really good there. And even though he, the hold up play, the dropping into the midfield, even though he didn't score a goal today or anything like that, I like the positions that he's finding himself in a match like this. He was able to do some things and create, and maybe there were moments where he looked like he was trying a little bit too hard, but I like that. I like what I've seen from him. And, Caroline, you could probably give me more insight to this than anything, being a Bayern watcher, but I think he wants to play more centrally than out wide. I think he wants to be in front of the goal and banging them in from there. And I think he has that ability to do it in certain matches. One coming up on Saturday against a team like Ipswich, I'll point to that and say, that's a game where I could see that guy getting a goal and an assist or 2 goals, like and really contributing on the score sheet. We saw he can score a brilliant goal. We saw it last week in the FA Cup. I like what I'm seeing from Tell, no matter where he plays. But for now, yeah, stick him at striker and let him cook.
Right, and I don't think it's going to be a bad thing when Solanke comes back for him to maybe rest a game or 2 and then come back fresh and then another one.
Because and excuse me, right. And not only that, but excuse me for interrupting you, but like he hasn't played a lot either. He was not playing a lot for Bayern, so to throw him in and give him too many minutes could lead, especially in this system, could lead to what we've been seeing with everyone else getting too many minutes. That's right.
Right. And I think Ange is cognizant of that because obviously we've seen the way he's managed like Mikey Moore's minutes, for example. I don't think he's going to be, overutilizing him, especially since he's a lone player technically for now, hopefully not in the future. But yeah, I do agree though that I think a more central role is really where he's suited. Even if that means I could potentially see him even functioning in a role kind of like we see James Madison do, where, he's technically in that midfield, but he's able to kind of play in the pocket and, get involved in the attack way more often than the rest of the midfield. So
yeah, I could see him doing some false nine stuff for us, Kaz. It's just for me, so especially let me preface that. I can see him doing some false nine for us, specifically against a team like Ipswich that we know is going to put, 57 people behind the ball and defend for the whole match and try to break on a counter. I think we're definitely, especially as we come up to those knockout rounds in the Europa League, I think we're going to see a lot more opportunities for us to do things like that. Solanke is so important to what Ange does in terms of the press. That's why my thing is that as much as I like Tell, he doesn't displace Big Dom in the league specifically when Dom is healthy. And so I want Tell on the pitch as much as I can possibly get him on the pitch. And so if that means that I'm having him start for a gassed out Son on the left-hand side, I'm comfortable with that. But I agree with you, at 19 years old and being able to get into these types of positions against Man United in the Premier League, it's a huge deal. He's 6 feet tall. He's only going to get bigger and stronger. He had an opportunity to put one away today. He just didn't understand how fucking incredible Decky is at football and didn't think he was going to get that touch off.
Yeah.
But then also there was an opportunity where he was trying to play a pass into, I think it was maybe Son or anyway. The point is he hasn't developed the chemistry yet with the front line, and
we're close.
It kind of goes both ways.
He has the vision, Kaz. There were a couple of passes he megged somebody while running in defense today to complete a pass in the build-up. He also threaded a ball through 3 defenders, but our player didn't recognize that he was going to be able to make that pass, and so he didn't make the run. So it's there. It's just a matter of, as you mentioned, building the chemistry.
And he's not only getting to know like new teammates, but he's getting to know new teammates who are coming back from injury as well. So like all of it still has time to mesh and gel. And it's just nice. It's going to be nice for Ange to have options as well. Like once Dom does come back, yes, get some rotation for all these boys, get them playing well together. And yeah, I was fully on board. You mentioned it earlier. It's the first league double over Manchester United since the 89-90 season. It's also the first back-to-back wins for Spurs in the Premier League since earlier this season in September, when they also beat Brentford and Manchester United in back-to-back Premier League games, which is coincidental, but also just kind of where we are in this wild season, that those are the consecutive wins twice in the same season. It's very, very bizarre. Did you have something there, Caroline? Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I really think the big difference today with having obviously Vicario back, but also just the depth, like you said. And we also can't expect for things to be perfect right away with these players coming back. I feel like there was a little bit of rust on a few of them. And obviously, like we just talked about, the partnerships need some work after a lot of these players having so much time off. So I think it's going to get better. Like it already is better, but it's just going to keep getting better.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt. And obviously with fewer games on the fixture list going forward, I mean, there is a midweek game at the end of February here, in 10 days or so against City. But, the Europa League will come back eventually. There's going to be enough games to go around for the amount of players that are coming back, which is like exactly what you want. It's only 2 competitions now and not 4. So that will obviously alleviate some of that. Is there anything else from the game itself you guys wanted to dive into before we start to talk about some of the off-field stuff?
Did we cover fuck Ruben Amorim? I'm just making sure. We did.
I think we did check that box. Yep.
All right, just making sure. He said some wild, stupid shit in the midweek and then got punched in the mouth.
That's the way it went down.
Okay, just make sure.
It is really wild to be talking about. Everybody was talking about this being like the bottom of the table United Spurs match, and like it didn't come off in that way for me. Like if you look at this game statistically, I wouldn't say it was massively dominated by Spurs, but they had well over a half goal more in XG. They won the possession battle, they won the shots on goal, the corners. Like they were just. I think the midfield is that spot where it was really, really different, and they were more effective. United are a bad. Like I'm not trying to take anything away from Spurs. United are not good.
Diallo and Menu both like between Thursday and Friday both came up like, yep, we're not only missing this match, but we're missing like a bunch more. So it's like, I mean, trust me, as Spurs fans, we get when out of nowhere some non-contact injury in practice takes out, one of your most important 11. Like I get that. And so, I have a bunch of friends that are Man United fans, and I feel for them a little bit here. I don't feel for their manager for running his fucking mouth, and I don't feel for Bruno Fernandes, who sucks, and I don't feel for Casemiro, who's a floppy bitch. But
that one flop,
dude, they were like, which one? There were 7.
Yeah. The one where Jed Spence got into him, and he just, that was an NBA level.
But it was like someone shot him from Rose Ed.
It was bad. It was
but
really bad.
You were talking earlier, Andrew, about thinking that the game was officiated well, and I think it got to that point. I was a little concerned about it at the beginning that the game was getting too physical because United were really towing that line. And with our injury situation, like we don't want players getting hurt right when they've come back. So, but I think it got better as the game went on, and our quality kind of won out.
And it sounds like there were a couple of knocks coming out of this game. Bentancur, Kevin Danso picked up a knock, as did Sonny.
What was Danso's knock? Do we know?
But I honestly, when he came off after, on the 80-minute mark or thereabouts for Archie Gray, I kind of just figured, maybe Ange just wanted to get Gray onto the pitch in this one rather than giving him a full rest. But it sounds like there was a slight knock. I didn't see it. I didn't hear it, but none of it sounded dire. None of it sounded serious. And, the point being that they don't have a midweek game. It's just Saturday's the next game. And then a Wednesday after that. Give some guys some time, maybe somebody. And here's the thing. If Danso has to miss the game Saturday, you slot Archie Gray in there. You still have Romero and Van de Ven to come back eventually, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. I mean, there is still depth there, even if somebody goes down. So like it's everybody's got to work their way back, and some guys are not able obviously to play the full 90 quite yet. I think we saw that with the likes of Odebear and who else am I thinking of? Brennan Johnson, who came on. Like those guys, he got them a good run out, a good 25-30 minutes or so on the pitch. But I mean, other than that, I'm pleased at where this team is getting to from a health standpoint. We've been talking about it for weeks, obviously, in terms of how high can this team climb? Well, as of now, 12th, and they were 14th not too long ago. So like if we can slowly increment this thing and get it, up into the top half, I'm going to be fine with it, so long as, we put a lot of focus into the Europa League knockout. We will learn
just
about
outside of the Europa Conference League, Andrew. Yes. Just outside of the Europa Conference League in the league table. That's what I'm looking for. And an all fucking hands on deck assault on that Europa League trophy.
Look, I'm fine with you winning. I'm fine with being in the Europa Conference League spot if you win the Europa League, because then you can just ignore it and not have to worry about it.
No, I don't even want to think about the fucking league anymore. I realistically, I want to get through this next stretch where we have a chance to go 6-0 over Manchester City in the season or whatever it is, and against the city of Manchester. We're just dominating.
Yeah. And the season we've had, no less.
Right, in the season we've had, dude, it's so crazy to look at.
I hadn't even thought about that. Yeah, it's true.
It's so crazy to look at the league table and see a plus 12 goal differential or whatever we have, right in front of a -7, and you're like, how did we get here? So no, it's for me, it really boils down to this. I don't give a shit about anything except for lifting that trophy in the Europa League at the end of the season. I think that alone is our goal as a club at this point in time.
Yeah,
Because
we'll find out. We'll
looking
find out
at
who
the
the
I would
table,
opponent
also
is on
add
Friday.
avoiding relegation, but I feel like we're very, very close to that being not a concern anymore.
I would say 37 points. It's if you talk to any old school Spurs fan back when we were really, 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 really shitty in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they would tell you 37 points keeps you up. No matter what else happens, just get to 37 points and we'll celebrate.
Well, and guess what you get on Saturday? You get an opportunity to face the
points.
team that sits in 18th place. It's a direct,
So it's a 6-pointer.
It's a direct 6-pointer. You get to face Ipswich, who are, basically the team chasing you for that last relegation spot. So that is something certainly to look forward to next week. And like I said, we'll find out the Europa League opponent on Friday. That's when that draw will happen. So
Did you watch any of that round?
No, I haven't. I don't even know where the Europa League stands. I totally checked out on that because I didn't want Spurs to be a part of the playoff round. I did see a little bit of the Champions League stuff at midweek, but not the Europa League.
Also, it's just been grueling lately, the number of games across both teams. So I took the week off from football pretty much.
Same boat, which makes our next topic even more annoying to even have to discuss. As everyone saw on social media and in the build up to this week, a big fan protest was held against ENIC and Daniel Levy before the game. It even bled a little bit after the game as fans were kind of just squatting in the south stand after the victory with their banners and their signs. Guys, I don't think we need to spend a ton of time on this because I think we're all kind of on the same page when it comes to this, and I don't think there's much to debate or to discuss. But where are we with all of this right now? Like, I guess the question I pose is how much can a fan protest actually change things, and what exactly are we looking for to change? Because I don't know what is expected from this, what the result should be in the mind of the people that are participating in such protests. I'm all for protest. I'm all for rebellion and revolution. I'm very pro those things, but when it comes to stuff that is just completely out of your control and completely, when you're powerless to do something and you just have to kind of sit back and watch. I know that fires a lot of people up, and that's kind of what this was. But Caroline, where do we go from here? What do we make of this protest, which in numbers was large, in impact? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like we've had this conversation many times and my stance has not really changed. I do feel like, what can these protests actually change? My personal opinion is not much because Daniel Levy is going to be at this club until Daniel Levy no longer wants to be at the club. It is the truth. And I have also mentioned many times that I get kind of frustrated with the fact that, we have seen changes on the men's side of the club in terms of strategy. And I personally feel like we need to have a little patience and let it play out. I think the severe injury crisis, which we need to just continue hammering that point that it was severe, it really changed things this season in ways that I don't think the club could fully prepare for. And I think they did respond in January with the transfers that they made. So, that putting that to the side, if I were, leading these protests, which I clearly am not, I would be more focused on the way the club is neglecting the women's team, quite frankly. And, we're going to get into like what's going on with them later in the pod, but I wish there was some more energy for that in the fan movement as it is.
TC, same question is to you. I mean, what does this mean, if anything?
Well, first things first, the fan always has a say.
Mm-hmm.
The fan always has a say when it comes to football. Football is a community sport. More than the NBA, more than baseball, more than any American sport. English football specifically is a community game. And the reason why is because that entire island can fit inside my state. Okay?
Yeah.
And when you're having a conversation about, well, what can the fans really do? You're going to see the people who work in the club at the fucking market. You're going to see them at Chick King across the street from the stadium. You don't get to just be up in your ivory tower and avoid them. There's the famous audio of a fan at the Old Lane looking at Daniel Levy and making a comment about his follically challenged appearance and telling him, I can see you and you can see me. Like, this is not a place where you can hide. Daniel goes to all the games. He hears all the things. So as we sit here and go, oh, it's just big business football. Oh, what can fans really do about it? Oh, I'm kind of sick of talking about it. Don't ever give up your voice because you think it's not going to make a difference. The truth is that is it going to change the way that Daniel Levy does business? Fuck no. The answer is no, absolutely not. The reason why Daniel Levy gets paid $6 million a year is because he runs this business like the greatest businessman on the planet. Everything is set up for his conglomerate to make the best bottom line possible, for him to achieve his highest possible bonuses, and to then cash out on his own accord. He's raising the profile of all of the shareholders within the board and all of the shareholders within all of the other conglomerate businesses underneath the football club with every single one of his actions. Okay. The biggest problem with Daniel Levy is he's came from a time when this club had a small purse to now he's trying to apply those same practices to a club with a big purse, and it's fucking us up. And his inability to recognize our change in profile means he needs to change his tactics is what has led to this protest. The inability for Daniel to see, as much as you see it as an important development for this club and for the conglomerate as a whole, to build these different projects around the area. And don't get me wrong, Tottenham by and large is kind of shitty. And so the stuff that he's doing around there is going to improve a lot of things. But that doesn't change the fact that on the football pitch, we're substandard. And so I think that it's really difficult for us fans, especially being abroad, to separate that. But ultimately, Andrew, I think that it is the lack of understanding that the only thing that the fans really give a fuck about is the football club's play on the pitch. And then the world prowess after that is all well and good. You can take back your fucking fill from the bottom beers if it means I get a title, right? Like, these are the types of things that fans are saying. And I don't think that they should stop saying it. I think the message gets through, even if it doesn't change anything directly.
Yeah, I will also add, I feel like I have a slightly different perspective on this than a lot of Spurs fans because I also support a Bundesliga team. And, you know, when fans protest in that league where they have the 50+1 rule and, you know, members actually get a vote in how the club does business, it does make a difference because they actually have an effective, meaningful voice, I guess I would say. It's not as futile as it is to protest an English team. It's just the truth. And, you know, we've literally
at this level,
we've seen actual action from protests. Like, for example, Bayern, you know, the fans got together and said, we do not want to have Qatar Airways as a shirt sponsor anymore, sleeve sponsor as it was. And they actually got that accomplished. So, you know, I think that for me, that's just why I try to keep perspective of, like, I know that, you know, English teams, their board's not going to go into the media the way they do in Germany. Like, there is less accountability and it sucks, but it's also reality. So for me, I'm just going to enjoy the fact that we won a game today.
That's completely fair. And the fan voice has been heard at Spurs with certain things. Who was the manager that they were going to hire? Thank you.
Gattuso.
They were going to hire Gattuso, and the fans outrage about that and speaking out about that, whether online or in person. You know, the club did hear that and backed away. And that is like I like I said, I'm all for these things. I think the thing that pisses me off is that we see the club bantered by its own. You know, it's the old, you know, we're eating ourselves alive here. The banter, like this week, for example, when the King shows up for an event to promote the charity work being done by the club and the NFL. Now, look, you can have your thoughts on monarchy. You can have your thoughts on the NFL. But you can't have negative thoughts about the club trying to do good, like Todd's alluding to, in the community, in Tottenham, trying to be a better place and run a business. Like, I saw so much banter about that. And look, you can make a joke about hopefully the king didn't pull a hamstring. Like, that's funny. I'm down with chuckling about that, and I hope he didn't as well. But like, to actually try to slight the club for doing all of these things outside of the actual football, when those are the things that are supposed to promote the club and make the club more well known. I mean, think about the fact that there's no sponsorship still in the stadium. There's a reason for that, because anytime an NFL game is played there, people have to say the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. And there, if you go back 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, way fewer people around the world knew what Tottenham Hotspur was. You could have said that to them and they might not have known. And the just the awareness level in general, all of that is positive stuff. I get why folks are only want to be focused on the football and only want to be focused on winning things. I understand all of that, and I'm part of that too. But I can't throw the baby out with the bathwater and say, screw all this other stuff, get that out of here, because it's all part of the same pot. It's all
yeah, dude. But it's not.
It's under the same roof.
It's not binary though, right? It's not binary. Like you like, there has to be give and take. And I feel like what the fans have done is said, we understand there needs to be give and take. And we've given, and we give, and we give, and we give, and we give. And all we see the club doing is taking and taking and taking and taking and taking. And nothing has changed in the way that they do business. They've barely kept up with inflation. We're at 43% of our revenue going to wages, which is by far the lowest in the Premier League, and embarrassing if you're having a conversation with other world football fans talking about paying our top players, barely 100 plus a week, when, you're looking at bench sitters at Manchester City that are making 200 a week. What the fuck are we talking about? Like, how are you supposed to? It's like the Pittsburgh Pirates trying to compete with the Yankees or the Dodgers payroll. Like, you're not gonna win as many games when you're not paying for the amount of talent. And that's what we're looking at. And that's what the fans are saying. And until that is the issue, until that solely is the issue, more of the revenue generated by the club needs to go into the wages of the football players of the club. Until that is the sole focus, we're out in the stars. We're not talking about the real thing. And so I think that that's what the focus needs to be. And that's why the fans' protest gives the opportunity to keep the focus there.
I hear you, Todd. The problem is, I don't think that has been the focus of this fan movement. I think a lot of the time they get way too bogged down in making juvenile songs about Daniel Levy. And
you're 100% right.
On actually giving a very distinct, defined demand. And, I think that's kind of to your point too, Andrew, like they really have to prioritize what is important to them when it comes to change at the club, and also be realistic about it.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think that, some people are targeted in their approach and other people just want to scatter shot and frankly banter, like I said, banter the club at any chance they get. And look, there's enough people from the outside that'll banter the club. We don't have to do it to ourselves as well. That's where I have a real issue with all of this.
I mean, what I struggle with there is it's like, as a fan, how do you defend the fact that only 43% of your wages go towards your players? Especially when you're in it, especially when you're in it.
Daniel Levy leave my club.
Well, my thing is that they've said these.
Feel good to kind of like make these jokes and songs about him. It's not achieving anything. I really think some of the people who are most heavily involved in this protest movement, they just need an outlet, quite frankly, for
you're not wrong
in their lives. And that's where they kind of lose me, because I'm like, y'all are not serious people.
Okay, so
and if I get canceled on Blue Sky Spurs, I'm sorry.
And let's say that people for being bald, goddammit. Some people can't grow hair on the top of their head.
Calling Levy a bald cunt isn't going to do any good.
It's not helpful, but they do that. That is so much of what they do. That's why
you're not wrong, but you have to understand that this, like, from my perspective, the fact that the pint and pie punter it doesn't have the ability to articulate clearly that we need more of our generated revenue to trickle down directly to the wages of our players, doesn't discount from his anger and his feelings of being abandoned by his club. And so
doesn't have to take
don't sit there and call Daniel Levy a ball cunt, because it's not helping anything. But when someone has a movement, show up. And so my hope is the fact that more and more people are showing up to this, you're going to get some articulate people at the front of it trying to lead.
I sure hope so, and I just hope. I agree with Caroline's point that Daniel Levy is going to leave this club when Daniel Levy decides to, not when a bunch of fans show up with banners.
Did you even see that the Qatari rumors that are coming out have Daniel staying on as the CEO anyway?
They all do. Every time there's a rumor of a takeover, it's like, but Daniel Levy is still going to be in charge, folks. And
so be careful what you freaking wish for. Is how I feel.
That's the other big side of this. That's certainly part of this. Guys, moving on from the protest side of things, I do want to get back to talking about injury stuff briefly, because the two players that are fully not back in any way, shape, or form yet are I think the two, maybe other than Vicario and in my case, Madison, that we've been calling for the longest time.
And in my case, Solanke.
Yeah, right. And that's Romero and Van de Ven. Romero and Van de Ven are still not back. Romero, word is it's a little bit more of just a slow healing process. But Ange Postecoglou made some comments in the build up to this match about Mickey Van de Ven and how he has not had a setback. If we remember, he returned a few weeks ago against Elfsberg, played a half, and has not been seen since. And everybody kind of suspected that was a re-injury of sorts of the hamstring. And Ange Postecoglou got into it. He was asked a really interesting and good question by Alistair Gold of Football.London. We'll hear a little bit about that right now and hear Ange's response.
Talking about working with Mickey on maybe the mechanics of his body.
Yeah.
Is that because of the previous hamstring injuries that are before Spurs as well? Is that kind of just...
Yeah, it's just him understanding his body. And look, it's not my space, but, you kind of look for the experts in those areas. And there's been various people who are sort of looking at different ways because he's an elite athlete, but he's also at the extremities of kind of speed and with all those kind of athletes, there are different methodologies in how to get to the space where they can perform at that optimum level without putting their body at risk. And so, he's still a very young man in terms of footballing, both experience and his career. So we want to get it right because what you want is Mickey to play 10 years at the best possible level, and this gives us an opportunity, hopefully, to kind of address as much as we can in season to give him the best chance of getting back to the level he can get to.
So I was really fascinated by that answer from Ange Postecoglou, because you're almost talking about trying to teach someone how to relearn how to run. In some respects, is what he's offering there. He's teaching. It sounds like the medical staff is teaching players almost how to play in an Ange system, which I think those things need to be simpatico. And we've had plenty of criticism for Spurs medical staff over not only recent history, but long-term history. This sounds like it could be something positive that could come from this. And I am weirdly totally fine with Mickey Van de Ven missing more games if it means he's learning something different to do with his body and with his skill, because his skill is obviously turning on those afterburners and getting back and making great stops and plays defensively in an Ange system where everything's going to be so exposed. So hearing this, I don't know how you guys feel, and I'm eager to find out, but it filled me with this sense of, okay, Ange's whole thing is now being implemented because it's finally bleeding into, we see an issue and we're going to try and fix it before we just continue having it be an issue. I don't know which one Todd, you look like you're ready to jump in on this. Go ahead.
You mean we replace the shitbox medical staff that we've had for 25 years and all of a sudden our players have a different approach to how they're doing things? I don't know, man. I honestly, I look at this and I go, there's certain people, and I'm not going to name names, in certain group chats that we're in that bang on about Ange always having injury-prone teams and hamstrings being an issue everywhere Ange has ever gone, la-da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, what I would say is what we're seeing now is a team fully backing a manager, not only with the player acquisitions, not only with the way that they're managing player workload, but with the way that they're teaching them how to take care of their bodies. All of this speaks to the fact that we play in 4 competitions every year if we do it right. And we want to do so at a high level for everybody. And I think that these things are critical. So I'm happy to see it. The other thing is Mickey Van de Ven can take as long as he likes, just as long as he and Christian Romero are starting for us in Bilbao on May 21st. That's all I give a fuck about. As I think I mentioned that earlier. I don't know.
Got to get there first, but yes, that would be nice. Kaz, what's your reaction to this? Because, like I
Always you.
said, I'm encouraged by them just doing something different and not continuing up this same stream. And part of this, to me, is the long, painful rebuild. It's changing all aspects of the club and not just going for it and not just playing in one way. This is trying to adapt, right?
But fuck Daniel Levy, am I right? He's done nothing.
It's all his fault. It's all his fault.
Well, I mean, generally fuck Daniel Levy, but other reasons. Anyway, go on.
My point is, I do think it's right to point out that things are changing at the club. Some of them not as fast as we would like, but that's just the reality of football when you're not owned by an oil state. Anyway, I also think part of this is Ange taking some learnings from the injury crisis that we found ourselves in and trying to be a little more proactive about managing injuries. And he's right. When you have a player like Mickey Van de Ven, he is kind of an outlier in terms of like physicality. And you got to take a different approach to it. So I think that's good. We don't want him to get burnt out this early in his career. I think of a player like Alphonso Davies as kind of a cautionary tale because he was also highly lauded for his speed and has had horrible injury luck and just has not been able to kind of maintain that. So, I really hope that they're onto something with these changes in their approach to how he's training and, rehabbing. So yeah, we need him to be fit and firing for like his whole Spurs career and not just, running on adrenaline.
I don't want Mickey Van de Ven to become Ryan Sessegnon. I don't want Mickey Van de Ven to become Eric Lamela. I don't want injuries to take over a player's body at such a young age. And he's 23. I mean, this is the perfect time where he should be coming into his peak years. And we've already seen his capability of being so great. But now if you can add an element and perhaps change some of the things he does that won't limit him in his talents and limit what he can do, but protect him from certain things, I cannot be more on board with something like that happening. And it shouldn't just be for him. Any player who is going to come into this system and the rigors of it, especially in a Premier League season, and TC mentioned, especially not just that, but 3 other competitions on top of that, hopefully every year. Like you want, and look, part of the problem we know is just simply squad depth. These players played too many minutes, and nothing is going to fix that other than adding to the squad depth and building out a more full roster that is more capable to deal with the number of games. But if you can have center backs should not need to be rotated so much because there's less running to do, unless you play in a system like this where there's a lot of running to do. And Mickey Van de Ven learned that. And now hopefully he's learning a way to control his body better and be healthier. And like I said, this is a 23-year-old. This is not a 27, 28-year-old. It's not like he can't learn this and adapt. Hopefully he can. But I'm excited to see when he is able to fully get back. And Romero's a part of this as well because he's been out for a while. I think it's a slightly different story just because the speed factor isn't there with Romero in the same way that it is with Van de Ven. But this is, to me, this was just a positive development. And it was fascinating to hear Ange describe it and talk about it too. And I also, I want to throw more credit out to Alistair Gold, who was obviously a good journalist, for asking a question like that and getting that type of answer out of Ange. So thank you guys for indulging me on the conversation, because I heard that in the pre-match and I thought that's interesting. And I'm fascinated by athletes and sports science and all of these kinds of things. And when you talk about seeing it at the highest level and seeing it in this way, I just thought that that was something that we should touch on, and I'm glad that we did. Let's go to the portion of the program that's not going to be as pleasant to talk about, because Spurs Women went to the Emirates earlier today and took it on the chin in a 5-0 defeat in front of more than 56,000 fans, which that's a positive. We do love packed stadiums for WSL games, but this was not a North London derby to remember for Spurs Women. They do still sit 6th in the WSL table after this, but Caroline, there simply wasn't really anything positive to take from this. I don't think no one player stood out as at least they were up for it. There was just not a lot going on. Arsenal just kind of put their foot on the gas early and kept it on the gas, scoring. They even scored one in stoppage time just to pour salt in the wound. I don't really know what else to say other than this seemed familiar for Spurs Women, getting battered by the teams that are better than them and barely scraping by against the teams that are pretty much on their level or below. I'll let you take it away and hopefully say something potentially more positive.
I don't know about more positive. The thing I'm struggling with, I think, the most lately is really the manager. I was pretty surprised to hear him kind of trying to equivocate after the game and say, well, you look at the stats, our performance wasn't that different to last year when we beat them 1-0. And it's like, are you kidding me, man? To me, these games were like totally different situations, because in that game, which was at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and not at the Emirates, to be fair, everybody was just completely locked in to their defensive duties. It wasn't a scintillating attacking performance in that game either, but at least everybody understood the assignment when it came to, keeping those Arsenal goals out. We did not see that today, quite frankly. And I really questioned his decision to keep Claire Hunt in the game, the entire game. I just did not understand how you could see a player so visibly struggling and keep her in to keep making the same mistakes over and over. And I don't feel like that's the first time we've seen that from her this season. And I'm sad that, this transfer really doesn't seem to be working out. But, that's just the reality that Villaham needs to face up to, I think. And it's not just her. I feel like there have been underperformances across the board from players who we really expect better from. And I just don't understand why some of them are starting week in and week out. The one positive, okay, I did find a positive, is that we did get 2 players back, Ella Morris and Drew Spence, who I do think made a bit of a difference once they came on as substitutes. It's a shame they weren't quite fit enough to start. Maybe we could have had a different situation, at least in terms of not ruining our goal difference even more. But yeah, I don't know. I think he's just going to have to start asking some hard questions about who can he really count on. Who's actually proven themselves to understand the tactics even. But also when it comes to that, I feel like we're going backwards this season. And I know I've said that before, but it does feel like, we're not seeing the same team identity that we saw last season even. And it's a lot of the same players.
And without the benefit of a cup run like there was last year too, it feels like the mid-table apathy has pretty much set in as well, which makes it really tough.
It has for me.
Yeah, it has for me as well. I mean, I was up early to watch this morning. I'm an early bird, so I woke up and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. The game's over here in the US. The game was actually on ESPN2, and I was like, cool, makes it easy. Don't have to go find some dodgy stream or anything like that. Just pop it on and sit with the coffee. But there was nothing going for Spurs, and it's hard to sink into that level of apathy. You mentioned Robert's comments after the match about it being similar to last year's victory over them, and that's just unequivocally false. You can make numbers say whatever you want them to say if you try hard enough, but it was not anywhere close to that. You mentioned it. The defending is just not there. It's sloppy. They can't seem to get out of their own end for long periods of time. We're not talking about, for a 4 or 5 minute stretch here. We're talking 10, 15 minute stretches where they can't even get out of their own end.
I don't know what this team's identity is. I don't know who we are.
I think that's
an issue.
Yeah, and we talked
to the defensive thing. every game when we play one of these top teams, after the match, Robert says, we're going to learn from this. We're going to make changes. We're going to improve. We haven't seen it when it comes to the defense. Or frankly, I feel like the attack is kind of getting neglected this season too. We're not really seeing any improvement when it comes to like patterns of play that were evident last season and are nowhere to be found this season. So yeah, I'm starting to have serious concerns about him as a manager, honestly.
Well, the other thing he brought up after the match too was talking about a balance between investment and what was the phrase he used? Organic journey, the organic journey that the club needs to go on. And I think after last season, when we saw the cup run and we saw some progress being made, we thought, okay, the organic journey is happening, that they are growing. The financial investment has been there, but in a very strange way where we're still, and this is something that we've talked about, we're still just plucking players from the Swedish league or players that Robert Villaham has connections to or knows of. He also brought up a technical director coming in, which is not the first we've heard of that, but we still really haven't heard anything else other than, yeah, there's supposed to be a technical director coming in to, basically serve as the quote unquote GM of the women's team in a similar way that Johan Lange does for the men's team. That'd be great. Like the investment, the scouting, all of that needs to be dumped in. And Caroline, you brought it up earlier, like, where's the outrage here on this end? Like, we see a lot of outrage. I know you're rolling your eyes at that, but like,
not at you, to be clear.
No, I know you're not rolling your eyes at me, but like, I know you're rolling your eyes at that, but like, that is the question that needs to be asked. Like, it's why should Spurs, with the position that they're in, just as a club and all the things we talked about earlier, the global awareness and so on and so forth, why should they settle for mid-table mediocrity? And mediocrity that breeds apathy is like I said, worse than most things, like other than relegation. Like I think I would take everything except relegation over mid-table mediocrity that leads to apathy, because they're not plucky, they're not spunky, they're not, and TC, you mentioned it, like, what's the identity? At least with Ange, and we started to compare Robert Villaham and Ange Postecoglou in many ways to, they want to be on the front foot. They want to be going forward and playing attacking football, which may leave you a little bit vulnerable at the back. But this is way different than what we've seen with Ange Ball. Bobby Ball has turned into, there's no defense and there's very little getting forward. And when they do, you can't really seem to string passes together or anything. It's just bad football. Like, there's no other way.
And I'm just going to say this. I want to know about, you're right, it's bad. And I'm going to say this, and I want to know Caroline's perspective on it, because you obviously are far better versed in this than I. But as I look at this team versus the team that Robert inherited, I feel like that team was far better structured for him to coach. And I feel like, oddly enough, with the acquisitions that have been made and with the departures that we've seen, he is now less suited to lead this group than he was when he first got here, which is weird.
Yeah, I don't totally disagree with that, honestly. I do think the squad has gotten weaker this season, despite the fact that we're still making a lot of transfers. But, like you said, Andrew, they've been very opportunistic and not necessarily the perfect fit for what Robert is trying to do, or what we think he's trying to do, because we're not always sure. But just to go back to like the idea of like being on an organic journey, I do think that as Spurs women fans, that's something we've really taken pride in. The fact that Spurs have worked their way up to the WSL through a sort of, organic progression, not, throwing money at it. Let's just say that, we really had to earn it. But I do think we're at a point now where the club has to get serious about the fact that they are in the WSL. They have to act like it. If they want to keep up with the teams that, supposedly we're trying to reach the level of, we're nowhere close, because we're not investing at the rate that we should be. And you've got a perfect case study in Manchester United, who came up the same season that we did. And they brought in those world-class players. They brought in, the World Cup heroes. And it shows in where they are in the table, quite frankly, and the fact that they have earned a top flight trophy sooner than we have.
Well, and I think the question that would need to be asked there is, are Spurs just comfortable being in the WSL? Like they are, there's no threat of relegation.
Well, we have some words from Daniel Levy, who at this point I will say fuck Daniel Levy, because he wanted the WSL to
Hey,
become a closed league. So that really does
Right.
speak to his personal feelings about feeling complacent about
Yeah.
our place in the league, quite literally.
No, that's and that's as long as he sees his name up there in lights, and by his name I mean the club's name, with the cities, the Uniteds, the Arsenals, the Chelseas, and the Liverpools of the world, that's good enough. I feel like, and no, that's not good enough. Like that's what people should be outraged about. I think that organic journey has not come with the actual investment, and I'm not talking about dollars, even though that is, I'm not talking about like the actual financial investment,
It's
but
targeted recruitment too.
that's exactly where I was going. It's about recruitment, and it's about putting a system in place where you can build something, not just having the manager reach out to people that he may know, or somebody who may know somebody who may know somebody. Like that's what it feels. It feels like this thing's being put together with a bunch of, tin cannon strings at this point, and that's not good enough for this club.
oh, you mean like Daniel Levy's out there buying bargain players that kind of sort of fit the need
It's
and
not even about bargain players. Like I said, it's not.
are willing to take the wages that we're offering them?
Yeah, it's
Oh,
not
you mean
even.
so it's that same fucking strategy it is on the men's side? Like that's the
Well,
really part is we talk about this. There's a lot of consistent through lines that we're seeing in approach, and it's obviously not exactly the same. But I can't have this discussion with you guys if there's not the concession that Daniel consistently looks for a bargain when it comes to players.
but at the same time, the men's club is in a way better position to actually recruit adequately because they have the structure. And we don't even have that with the women's team. We don't have a director of football.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
It might be happening. We don't know. Like as of right
Right.
now, they're still a figment of our imagination. And, as harsh as I've been about Billaham, he's been dealt a tough hand here. He really
Mhm.
has. I think we really overperformed last season. That's very clear now. And he's being expected to kind of get the same results without any acknowledgement of the fact that some of those key players are gone now. Like they've not been adequately replaced. So it's very difficult for him to work with what he has. I have quibbles about a lot of his like game management, which I think could be better, but at a squad level, I don't think he's been set up for success.
I completely agree. He's managing at some points with 1.5 hands time behind his back because he's having to do 2.5 jobs, in terms of recruitment and coaching and managing and all of that. So I agree with you. Yeah, TC, I don't disagree with anything you're saying in terms of investment and financial. I'm talking about structure more than that, because and part of that is financial. You've got to invest financially to put the structure in place, but the structure is just
Bro,
non-existent with the women's
bro,
side in comparison
how
to the
many
men's side.
years did it take Daniel Levy to put any fucking structure in on the men's side?
I,
And this
I
is a
know.
Premier League football club.
Oh,
Like,
I'm aware.
dude, he was negotiating George Kevin and Kudu deals personally, every freaking window
He
for
was
like
trying.
15 years.
He
He
was
signed Jen
trying and
Spence.
he was trying and failing 3 weeks ago to get Tell on board, and it took a
Well,
call from the manager to do it. Like this is the
I
point that I'm trying to
love
make.
I love that. That makes me happy. What I'm saying is, up until recently, when the most magnanimous person at our club is Ange and not Daniel, I would say that Daniel has tried to throw his weight around. The problem is he's been such a dick to so many people throughout Europe for so long that all of the new executives that are coming in have all heard horror stories about dealing with Daniel Levy. And so he has literally ostracized himself so that he needs other people to close these deals. That's what we're seeing. And so the fact that now here we are with him trying to build the structure out again and it falling short or taking significantly longer than anybody would want, all of this is pretty par for the course, and it's sad to say.
It is that. It's also sad that, because of the lack of games on the women's side, We have to wait another 2 weeks for another game because of an international break. So Spurs Women will not be back in action until March 2nd when they host Manchester City. So it doesn't get any easier either. Bunny Shaw hat trick incoming, I'm sure.
That is guaranteed.
That is guaranteed.
So I got a quick question for you, Andrew.
Oh, good. I'm glad I waited for you to jump in with a question here as we go to wrap. Go ahead, Todd. What's your question?
What goalkeeper starts for the Europa League games the rest of the way?
Guglielmo Vicario is the starter for this club going forward until
For every single match.
yeah, I don't see why that shouldn't be the case.
Well, I could
we
see
have-
Kinski getting some games in the Premier League coming down the line, once we get back into Europa.
Would you rather see Kinski or Brandon Austin if it meant playing them in the Premier League?
Kinski. Kinski's the younger player. He's the investment that they made. It's definitely Kinski for me. Brandon Austin. Look, kudos to Brandon Austin for what he's done this season and stepping in the way that he has and put together some good performances. But he's the third goalkeeper. Fraser Forster is no longer existing in my mind or my heart. So
I mean, we don't want to.
He's the Michel Vorm of this team.
Yes, blessings be to Fraser Forster, but yeah, it's Vicario and then it's Kinski. And look, if Vicario needs a blow, I don't know why he would, but sure, throw Kinski in there. But we all got slightly over our skis when it came to Kinski's debut and those first couple matches, just because he did look so good, but he also very much showed his youth and inexperience at times as well. And that's totally fine because you know what he has? He has youth and he has inexperience. And that's totally fine to show those things when you have those.
Yeah.
things.
When your first Czech League start came just 18 months ago, you're okay to get some nerves when you're in the Prem. That's fine. No, I get that. And I value it. Chaz?
This is where I do get to pat myself on the back now because I did say from the start, Vicario will be getting his spot back. I felt very confident in that. So, like y'all said, we're not taking Brandon Austin for granted. Great squad player, excellent vibes. However, Kinski is the long-term future, so he's the one who needs to be getting the development.
Now, do you sell high on Brandon Austin this summer and get him to a Millwall for $5 million, which you never thought you'd ever get for Brandon Austin, right? And then keep Alfie Whiteman as your third goalkeeper and just keep it moving because everything's the same?
You don't really need 3 goalkeepers. You certainly don't need 4. So I'm fine with that. If the opportunity arises and the player wants it, sure. If the player wants to hang around and be the third goalkeeper,
he can Scott Carson it up for me. That guy's Spurs through and through. I love it.
I'm fine with that too. Yeah. And by the way, like I want Anton Kinski to push Guglielmo Vicario. Like I've always been the Vicario not truther. What's the opposite of truther? I've always been
skeptic.
I don't even want to use.
But you're fucking skeptical, so say it.
The most skeptical. How about that? Of anyone on the pod of Vicario. I'm trying to couch all of my takes here. I have, and I'm open to like I'm fine with admitting that. Yes, there's times where Vicario has made me like, oh, is this really the guy long term? But my goodness, was he great in this match against United? And yes, I want him, but I want him. I'm glad that we have a guy now that can push him. Is all I'm saying, because we didn't have that before.
I agree. And my contention is, Kaz, my contention on the two is that if you were to put them together, they would be the perfect goalkeeper. And I think I really do, because like the things that we don't like about Vicario are he spills too many second chances. He gets bullied on his line in the middle of set pieces, and he doesn't control his box as well as we'd want him to. But everything else he does awesome. And we would say about Kinski, he does a great job controlling the box. He's excellent with his feet and his distribution. He does a really good job of clearing lines on corners. But when it comes to actually saving the ball from going in the net, I mean, there is a chasm between their levels, and Vicario is just that much higher.
I will say Vicario gave up far fewer second balls than Lisa Kopp did this morning, because that was making me very concerned.
That's fair.
But,
Vicario had 6 saves. He gave us our first. He gave us our first home clean sheet since August.
Definitely in the
It's
Premier League. Yeah.
definitely a massive improvement, and was better than the goalkeeper standing on the other end of the pitch today too. So all good things, all plus things. That is going to do it. I'm going to go do what some of those folks at the protests should be doing and touch grass this afternoon. Might even participate in using a little grass. That's what we do here. We're going to have a Sunday. We're going to enjoy a victory. And we're going to be back with you next week to talk about more Tottenham Hotspur football. Again, Ipswich next week. And we will also, by then, we will know who the opponent is in the Europa League. And we can kind of start to set our eyes forward on that as well. So that'll be fun.
For those still hanging out, going into Turkey, AZ Alkmaar has a 4-1 advantage over Galatasaray. And Real
I did not know
Sociedad.
that. That's actually great news.
Yeah, I agree. And Real Sociedad is up 2-1 in their match over that Danish team with the Horns.
Midtjylland.
You said it.
Mighty, them. Those guys. Those fellas. We'll see. We'll find that information out on
guide from Europa League. Please.
That's fair.
They need a lot of.
Could you imagine the pronunciation guide from the Europa Conference League, though? That's what I'm talking about.
They really need it.
We don't want to talk about
the Yep.
We don't want to talk about the Europa Conference League. We don't even want to dream that scenario. That's going to do it for this episode of The Depot. Be sure to check out our episodes on our YouTube page so you can see all of us snickering and hiding our faces at all of the stupidity that goes on here at The Depot. YouTube.com/Tottenham Depot. Leave us a rating and review on your podcast app of choice as well. It really does help spread the word. You can follow us on all the social medias at Tottenham Depot. For Caroline, who is at CG Stefko, for Todd, who is at TC_Kasho on X, and the Todd Father on Blue Sky, you can follow me at Aesthetica and follow us at Tottenham Depot. This has been the Tottenham Depot podcast. As always, come on, you Spurs.